The spectacular five-color pool crowns the Huanglong scenic area. I'd arrive early and look out over the stunning colors of the pool, then watch as the sun crested the mountain behind and repainted the valley in brilliant gold. Huanglong literally means yellow dragon, which makes sense when the long valley is viewed from above. Calcite deposits of travertine stretch along the valley floor in a sinewy beige streak. Throughout the long mountain valley, calcium carbonate buildup has formed terraces over the ages, resulting in the spectacular pools of clear turquoise you see as you descend the trail.
Welcome to the Roaming the Earth podcast. I am your host, Drea Castro, and I am here with Amado DeHoyos. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to travel the world, but sometimes it helps. Having spent 8 years building a career testing rockets with SpaceX, Amado DeHoyos decided to leave it early in 2015 and spent the last 5 years circling the globe on a seemingly never-ending quest, the desire to see the world. A friend made the fateful decision early in that trip to gift Amado a book called 100 Wonders, and he would sweep the globe, attempting to visit as many of those as he possibly could. Currently at 97, those last 3 are going to be tricky. The checklist of 100 wonders would expand to the checklist of UNESCO World Heritage Sites and would then expand to just being and living in the moment among the cultures of the world. Thank you so much for joining us. Why are you passionate about travel, and what does travel mean to you?
I just in general, I love to learn. And so travel gives the opportunity to learn about history and nature and culture and everything all in one. So it's been fun. I liked it in school, and now all of a sudden I found myself learning about history in the places where that actually happened. And it's an incredible experience. So
now you're like a jet setter. You've gone to how many countries?
117. Well, counting Antarctica, which isn't really a country, but yeah.
Yeah. And you've been to how many UNESCO sites?
430, I think.
430.
Just over 40% of them, which is, it's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. They're amazing. This is what UNESCO is. I don't know if you know, your viewers know, or whatever, but the United Nations set out to highlight the places of particular importance for all of humanity. So that's the natural sites, which Huanglong, what we were talking about, is one of those. So you can see why. Culture sites, things that have important, cultural memory for all of humanity, historical sites. And so when you find these around the country, wherever you live, you're going to learn something about us and how we're all, together, how we came to be. So it's been good.
That's pretty amazing. I learned about UNESCO sites when I went to visit Machu Picchu. And I had finished the Salcantay trek, and I nearly died. It was great. And then they give you that stamp on your passport. And I was like, I need this. I don't know if they do that at all the UNESCO sites. Do they?
No. But, that one, I was so eager to get that when I went to Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu was one of my first trips. And then afterwards, later in the year, my passport book was filling up, and I was like, oh no, I need more space.
You're like, I need more pages.
Yes.
That's like one of my favorite things so something that I carry with whenever I travel in the US is a national park passport. I need those stamps. Like,
do you have the little blue book, or do you have the big one now? I have the suitcase book with a lot of pages.
I have the little one, but I have like 3 of them now.
One of the important things that UNESCO does, and in particular with Machu Picchu, there were so many people going that it was starting to erode the infrastructure up there in the mountains. And so UNESCO actually makes sure that these sites are protected. So they have to implement like the number of visitors that can go, and they do those sorts of things because of UNESCO. So it's an incredibly important organization.
Yeah, I remember the Huayna Picchu, that little mountain right behind Machu Picchu, the mountain that you see when you when you
With
see
the best
Machu
view.
Picchu with the best view. You can climb up that thing, and they only had, I think there's like a limit. I don't know how many.
I think it's like 100 a day.
Yeah, something like that. And
I know. I didn't go. Like, I didn't know about it when I went. Now I have to go back.
you have
But
to go back. Yeah. My tour guide that had taken me around the mountains was like, "Do you want to get there early in the morning?" I was like, "Hell yeah, get my ass up early to get up on that mountain. Like, I need to get up there." So that was pretty fun. Tell me about before you decided to travel the world. And I know you worked for SpaceX. Obviously it's about space exploration. Is that why you became an explorer of Earth?
um, not really. Actually, I ended up at SpaceX because I always wanted to be an astronaut. Still want to be an astronaut.
You had that explorer thing going on.
Anybody from NASA who's listening? No, and so I was at SpaceX and I worked for 8 years, and I just didn't take any vacation. I loved what I was doing, and so it was easy to get sucked in and just do that and make sure that was going to be a success. And when I left, it was what's next. And so my thought then was, all right, let me go see the big highlights. I'm going to go to Rome, and we're going to go to Machu Picchu and, Big Jesus in Brazil. Two things happened that year. This was 2015. The earthquake hit Nepal. And so all of those old temples just were destroyed. They've rebuilt them. UNESCO helped again, and they rebuilt them in the same style. And with some of the same construction material, which is just amazing. So that was one. And the other one was in Palmyra in Syria. ISIS was kind of coming up, and they destroyed Palmyra, which was this old Roman city in the desert, and it's just gone. So that was the thought when I started traveling, is like, if I don't go see some of this stuff now, it might not be here when I next get an opportunity. So let me just go. And like I said, the other thing was my friend gave me this book, 100 Wonders, which for an engineer, if you give an engineer a list, I had to go through the list. And so that's a little bit was, let me go see the big things. And then suddenly somebody gave me this book, this list of the big things. And so it just kind of came to be a thing. So
you worked for you interned with NASA. You joined SpaceX. So why didn't you go forward with your astronaut dreams? Were you just like, I'm ready to do something else? Like, what was it?
Well, I've applied. I'll keep applying. But there's so many very, very qualified people.
I have no idea what it's like to, to actually try to be an astronaut. No idea. So hearing your journey and what it's like to try to do that is.
I know what it's like to unsuccessfully apply. No, I mean, you can watch the videos and they do some amazing things, and it's just an amazing set of people, people who are jet pilots and doctors and physicists all in one. That one person is all of those. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't doubt it. I feel like one day you'll get that chance.
Hopefully.
I'm putting it out there. When I see something, it happens. Let me tell you. I'm not even joking.
I'm counting on you.
I know. I say stuff and then it happens in people's lives. So watch you apply again, and then all of a sudden you'll be an astronaut. I'm like, see, I told you. Okay. So what was the first place that you went to on that list?
On the list? So what happened was I was just poking around the U.S. trying to figure out longer term plans, and I met with a friend of mine, and we decided to plan out a South America highlights trip. So three weeks we went to Machu Picchu, and we flew in and took the train over. I would love to go back and hike it, and I just didn't know about those things back then. Yeah. So we went down to Buenos Aires, and we went up to Iguazu Falls. And next to Iguazu Falls, there's Itaipu Dam, which at one point was the largest dam in the world. And you can go and take these engineering tours. I'm going to nerd out a little bit. And you walk down and you put on the hard hat, and you're next to these massive turbines that are shaking the earth around. It's unreal. So we did that. We went to Rio and, saw Big Jesus and Sugarloaf Mountain. And then we went to Manaus, which Manaus is on the Amazon River, and you might have seen pictures. It's where the two major legs of it join, and the river flows black on one side and brown on the other for miles downstream before they finally mix. And so it's just unreal to see those two right next to one another and not mixing. So we got back, and she was moving and getting rid of some stuff. And again, this was the book, and so I flopped through the book and realized we'd been to 5 just on this quick trip. Machu Picchu, Iguazu Falls, Itaipu Dam, and the Amazon River. And the
split.
Jesus Christ, the south, yeah. So that was like, all right, well, when you think of the big things, we just went to visit them. Let me try and plan my trip like that. And so I next planned a Europe trip that kind of bounced between a lot of those and some other, highlights in between.
You've been everywhere. You've literally been everywhere.
Not quite. There's so much more.
I feel like you have.
More.
Like, I'm like, that's a lot of countries and a lot of places that are just, it's pretty amazing. You said that you had mentioned to me earlier that you had done the book, obviously, 100 Wonders of the World. Do you know the author? Who's the author?
Oh, let's see who's on it. And this is old. I would actually post some updates to it if I had the chance. It says Michael Hoffman and Alexander Krings.
Okay, so if anybody wants to check out that book.
Do it, and then go visit them. Go visit the places. I actually haven't even read the write-ups for the book because I've been there.
So what's the last 3 that's left on that book?
The last 3. All right, the last 3 are Mecca, which you have to be Muslim to go to Mecca. And I'm not really about to convert for that.
Yeah.
But I would love to go and visit and see the Hajj, the pilgrimage. That's one. Babylon is another in Iraq. And I know some people who have been to Iraq recently, but it just doesn't. It's a little scary right now, and especially now. And then the last one is the International Space Station, which, again, knock on wood.
I'm telling you, it's going to be 98.
So
okay,
we'll see.
Those are harder to get to.
A little tough.
Just a little. So you've been to Antarctica, which is a continent that I have been dying to go to, but you have to have like a purpose, or you have to do something. I don't know. What are the secrets to getting to Antarctica?
Yeah, you have to be a scientist, or you have to pay a lot of money, and that's what I did. Basically, a certain number of people can go at any point, and so you end up on a ship with, I think, about 100 people, and only so many can be on land at a time. So half are in small Zodiac boats, and the other half are on land on Antarctica. With the amazing thing about Antarctica is the wildlife just doesn't know what to do with humans, right? We're not natural there, so they don't care. So you go and stand there, and the penguins walk back and forth, 2 feet in front of you, doing their little walk and falling on their face, and they're amazingly cute. They smell very, very bad.
Do they?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Interesting. Okay, all the documentaries on TV about Antarctica, no one's ever been like, it smells here. So.
You'll see it. Like I said, when you watch it now, you'll see it, because once you've been there, somebody's always going to make that comment. And yes, it does, because they just nest and they go. The whales. I mean, you're out on the water in small little Zodiac boats, which is just these inflatable life raft things, and whales just surface right next to you. It was an expedition that was supposed to try and cross the Southern Circle, just by boat. Floating around. You stop and get off and do things and go down further. And so they do a thing as far south as you are, the quote unquote polar plunge. So the ship spun around to clear the ice, and those of us who were brave enough jumped into pretty much freezing water. I mean, as close to ice make it. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you have pictures?
I'd have to dig them up, but yes.
I mean, pictures or it didn't happen.
I think the temperature of the water was 0.2 degrees. 10, 11 seconds, you just can't feel your fingers and your toes. And everybody thinks I'm going to jump out and I'm going to swim around. And you jump in and hit the water, and it's like, back to the boat. Let me get back to the boat. And they've got a rope on you, and they're pulling, and you're trying to swim and failing. And it's amazing. But I'll send you some pictures.
Oh my God. That is crazy. I can't even do that. I've tried to do that in alpine lakes and I can't put two of my feet in. I can only put like my left or my right. Like I can't
You just have
imagine
to
like
jump in because your body's going to tell you no. So you just got to jump in,
my
son.
body is like, you are from the Philippines. You
No,
should be in
no.
warm water, not in cold water. What does it matter with you?
We're so used to all of the greens and these colors of flowers and those sorts of things. And for us, the boats, we sailed in a boat from the southern tip of Argentina. And you cross this treacherous bit of water that can get very bad and really tough weather conditions. And then all of a sudden you arrive in Antarctica and like half the color palette is gone because it's just whites and blues, but it's still so incredibly beautiful. So yeah, it's
That
amazing. If you can get there, it is well worth the trip.
that's definitely on my top of my bucket list. Like I got to get to Antarctica. I got to
Amazing.
do it. And that's been ever since I was a kid. I was like, "What's that thing on the bottom there?" And they're like, "That's Antarctica." I'm like, "I have to go there." Like not even understanding the conditions or how hard it is to get there. That is so cool. What's your favorite place that you've ever traveled?
Just overall in general, I love New Zealand. I would like to move to New Zealand and live there forever. It's just beautiful. They've got, the mix of mountains and glaciers alongside pristine beaches, alongside rolling hills. And, Peter Jackson shared a lot of that with, his Lord of the Rings series, because that's where it was filmed. And that's what it looks like. It's amazing. Great people though. An amazing history. Good, a blend of the indigenous culture there, and when the British arrived, it's got one of the best mixes of like the Pacific Island food. They brought it in from everywhere, and it's just delicious. Everything. So,
I hear people who travel to New Zealand all the time and they talk about the
have you not been?
mountains. I've never been. No, I've
Oh,
actually
okay.
never been to Australia or New Zealand, even though I know a lot of Australians. One of my very good friends lives in Sydney and like, she's like, "What are you doing? Come here." And I just end up going elsewhere. But New Zealand, every time someone talks about it, they never talk about the food. So that's really interesting. That's a really interesting perspective. I never knew that. Any tips or tricks that you can share with somebody who wants to go?
New Zealand, or it's easier than it always looks. Just go. You'll figure things out. You'll have a blast, and then you'll be hooked. Um, for New Zealand in general, though, there's a few companies that rent vans, and the best way to see New Zealand is, not in the cities, but to drive through the countryside. So I rented a van for about a month and, drove the length of North and South Island, and saw some things kind of on my own time. If you're in New Zealand in what is their summer, our winter, it's far enough south that you get these epically long days. It's daylight into midnight. And so I would go on these long hikes up into the mountains all by myself. And, from 6, 7 a.m. through midnight, and get back after that long day and have just seen the most spectacular wilderness. It's good.
I didn't, you went there for a whole month? That is,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great way to experience.
I think any place, if you could stay for a month, you really, at least a month, you really start kind of understanding you're part of it. You're not just like this, person that's passing through. You're starting to feel like, okay, I know where that place is, or you know what I mean? Like you just start understanding a little bit more. So that's always really nice. Like that's like such I think a luxury. I love being able to go to a place for at least that long.
Yeah.
I know that's not possible for most, for instance, work or whatever. But like, man, if you could do it, I would say take the whole month to go wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
Do you have any other tips that you have for, like favorite destinations or anything in New Zealand that you suggest?
Um, I think one of the things that was, I mean, I'll Um, down south, Milford Sound is a part of the fjord system in far south New Zealand, and is just absolutely gorgeous. Um, Go out, take a boat, and you'll ride through, and just these mountains rising out of the ocean, and thin, narrow passages, and like any fjord system in the world, they're all beautiful, but that one in particular is stunning. That Tongariro crossing, basically a day hike that takes you up a mountain, part of which is Mount Doom again in the Lord of the Rings series. You can walk up that, which is tough because it's this rocky scree stuff. So every step you take up crumbles underneath you.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, it's a tough up.
But still do it because it's awesome.
But still do it because I mean, I was on top of Mount Doom.
Yeah, hell
And the
yeah.
fun thing for those always too is if you're not scared of it on the way down, you basically just start running, and it carries you down, and you just have to lean back into it a little bit and trust that you're not going to fall, but it's fun.
What is your most interesting travel story? Any dangerous, exciting travel stories? I'm sure you have a few.
Yeah, I've got a few. It's yeah, I don't know. Interesting. One thing I would say, and this would be, a huge recommendation. Again, if you have the month, one that I'd found along the way was the Camino de Santiago, which is basically a walk across Spain, an old pilgrim trail that dates back, 1,000 years almost now. And so people have been taking that across Europe through the centuries. And people do it now for a variety of reasons. A lot of people go to find themselves. Some people go for the religion aspect of it still. Some people go, to get in shape, to get away, any reason. And so you'll if you go and do this walk, you'll come across all those people, and you get to meet everybody and hear everybody's story. People have been through heartbreak and tragedy, and just every walk of human life. But one of the best things about that is when you finally get there to Santiago de Compostela at the end, and you stand in front of this old cathedral. There's a very large plaza there, and you can watch all of the people coming in, having completed whatever their portion of the walk has been. Some people walk for a day. Some people walk just the last 100 kilometers. Some people have walked from Spain, so 1,000 kilometers. From France, so 1,000 kilometers. And it's just every range of human emotion you see as people come in and see that end, and they're crying and they're laughing and they're meeting back up with all of the people that they've seen and met over the past month. And it's just this deeply spiritual thing, whatever you believe in, to see that emotion on live display. And I was there. I spent 3 days there visiting the city and the museums and the cathedral itself, and just found myself coming back in the middle of the day to sit in the plaza and watch people come in. So amazing.
Did you hike it?
Yeah, hiked. I mean, it's not really hiking. There's
I'm not
stretches.
sure, yeah. I've had a friend do it. He did the whole thing, but I didn't know that it was like, it's a walking.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just trails. Some of it is by roadside. A fair bit of it's flat. That first stretch between France and Spain, you're crossing the Pyrenees. So it is a little, that's a tough day. And
Yeah.
right at the very beginning.
But you've done it. Did you do a portion, or did you do all of it?
I did all of it. Yeah, I walked about 750 miles from that border with France through Santiago de Compostela, and then I continued on to the ocean to say that the name of the city at the ocean is Fin de Terre, which the end of the earth. Like, how could you not walk to the end of the earth?
What did you learn? What were you there for, and what did you learn?
I was there for the experience, to see a stretch of the world in that way by foot, which, I did this 2 years ago. So at that point I'd been traveling for 3 years, and it had been planes, and it had been boats, and it had been, some trains. It had been a lot of car. I'd never taken the time to walk from point A to point B. There were days you would start walking in the morning, and by late afternoon, you'd have walked 10 miles, and the same hill or mountain would have been off the horizon to your right that whole time, where most of the rest of my travels I'd have driven by and seen that in 30 minutes. So it's a different appreciation of what we have, what's here and around us, a different pace. Something I learned to take advantage of those different perspectives.
I love that. So, yeah, so you came out with it with a different perspective. Is there anything else that you feel like you've learned or that you kind of just hold with you?
I guess in a sense, how connected we can all be. Again, because that's one of those where people were coming from various different lives and different backgrounds, and you just, at the end of the night, most of the time, if you do it the traditional way, you'll end up in a hostel, sleeping in bunk beds with 10 or 15 other pilgrims, 3 or 4 of which always snore very, very loudly, so be ready for that. But around a table sharing these humongous meals, right? We're just not used to expending that amount of calories walking 20, 25 miles a day in some very hot conditions. And so you can eat whatever you want. You have these huge meals at the end of the day and you still lose weight. But no, just how connected we all are and all can be. And we all kind of go through these journeys emotionally for various reasons throughout our life. And it's just amazing to be able to share that, to feel that.
We're hearing you and like, I'm getting a sense of what it's like, but you don't really know until you actually are walking that 750 miles, what that looks or feels like, or we're not going to really understand. So it must be really nice to be around travelers and pilgrims that are just kind of like walking along with you, feeling the same exhaustion.
Yeah. And you have that kinship at the end of the day of, just barely being able to stand sometimes. And so, yeah. And the payoff again is sitting in the plaza in front of that cathedral at the end, when you see people just literally break down on the steps of the church. And it's so beautiful.
That is so amazing. I'm going to have to either do that trail or even just sit in that town and just take photographs of people.
Do at least part of the trail. Give you, 2 days of walking or 3 days of walking.
Yeah, I could see myself doing it. I mean, I'm a hiker, so I'm all about that stuff, So.
And it's easy hiking. It's just long.
Yeah, obviously. It's just long. Yeah. I could see myself doing it. Perhaps. Okay, so where are you going to next? What's your plans?
The goal for me was always to kind of get through that 100 wonders and then move on to the next phase of my life. The next phase of my life was when I left SpaceX. It was to chase a dream. I'd always wanted to be an actor. So right now, and this kind of all timed up perfectly for me because I stopped traveling and suddenly the world closed down. So thankfully I got out in time. But so I've been taking online classes, and I'm going to see if that dream is a possibility. And in the back of my mind, obviously, again, there are a ton of other trips that I have kind of stewing around. One of the big ones, I'd love to get a boat and sail the Caribbean, visit those islands individually, spend, a few days a week on each of them and get to know the island and the culture and the history of each. I'd done it before. I took, a cruise ship when I was younger, and you go and the cruises have robbed a lot of that for some reason. You end up at the ports and they all seem like cookie cutter versions of, it's the same shops and the same big businesses. And I don't want to see that. I want to see the island itself and how it came to be and, how each one is different. So maybe that. And then if that works out, set sail and loop the globe, maybe.
All right. What is the one interesting item that you take with you when you travel, or interesting thing that you always purchase on your travels?
Don't carry, totems, or some people take the stuffed animal and take a picture everywhere. I never ended up with one of those. Just the one thing that has been a godsend recently was just the water bottle with the filter in it. Mine's a little Life straw. It's got a filter.
Those are great.
Yes. If you're out on the trail, you can scoop it up and not have to worry about bacteria or those sorts of things. And the same in, any city around the world, because I was so used to drinking bottled water, bottle. And that's just kind of the norm. And when you get out and travel, there's just plastic bottle trash everywhere. So I feel a bit better now having this and being able to pour my own and trust that I'm not going to get sick from the water.
So the one you have is a life. Let me see it.
Mine is Life Straw. There's plenty. There's a ton of different ones.
Yeah, Life Straw is a good one. I know a few people that use it when they're hiking. So that's a great thing to carry. I always ask people this because some people have very practical things. Like that's very practical and very useful. But also like, I think that that's like a needed thing and a good tip for sure. What is the one piece of advice that you can give to a younger you?
My younger me. So I started in traveling in 2015, and our relations as the U.S. with Iran were very different at that point. I would tell myself to go there and spend a month in Iran. It's just one of those missed opportunity places for me right now because things aren't so great between the two countries. And there's so much culture there and so much history and so much beauty, both natural and man-made. I would love to have, gone and visited. Obviously, I didn't know my travels were going to end up like this when I was that age, but if I could go back in time. And so I'll be looking out when things do open up again to try and get there and see and learn and share.
How has the, obviously the pandemic is happening in the world. How has that affected you? And what are you learning and doing right now?
Again, not much. My last big trip was to Australia to start 2020. I caught the fireworks out in Sydney Harbor from a boat and then kind of crossed. I'd been to Australia before, but more the East Coast and north up to where the Great Barrier Reef is. And so I hadn't been inland and to the west. So skirted down through Canberra and Melbourne and across to Adelaide, and then took the train across the barren nothingness to Perth. And then I was back I spent some time in Canada for a short bit, and then was back in the U.S. One of the things that started some of my travels was the San Antonio Spurs basketball team. They take a long road trip every year. And so in 2015, I went to each of the games on that road trip.
Obviously a fan, right?
I grew up with the Spurs. It's been an amazing ride. Great team, good culture. So all of that. So back then in 2015, it was 2 goals in one. I had decided I was going to visit all of the state capitals. My little brother was in going to school in Colorado. I went to visit him in Denver and asked, what is there to do here? And he was like, I don't know. I just go to school, which, I can't fault him. I did that once when I was in Boston. But so I decided I went in downtown, and there was the Capitol, this just grand, amazing building with the huge dome. And I walked in. And there was a tour there, so I took the tour. And then all of a sudden, you're learning about the history of the state and, how it got settled and how it was defined. And then at the end of the tour, they take you up into the dome and, you look out the window and the Rocky Mountains are there just behind the Capitol and the dome. And it's spectacular. So I was like, all right, well, this is kind of cool. Let me do this. I wanted to travel the States kind of on my own terms. So as I go around, let me, visit each of these. Most of them are in the middle of the state. So if you're driving through, you'll have seen a large swath of the state anyways. And so that road trip was part of both. So I finished at the end of this trip. I found myself back in the States in February, and it was right around the time the Spurs were going to start this road trip again. And I was like, all right, well, let me bookend it. I did it before. Let me do it again. And so I did. I followed the Spurs. And then that so cool. In February. And by that time, the disease had spooled up, and very shortly after, they canceled the NBA season. So that was it for me. I had booked acting classes, and so I've been doing those online now.
There's quite a bit of online stuff going on in the acting world for sure. Tons. So yeah, that's crazy. You went and followed I've never met somebody who's just like, I'm just going to go follow this team. Like you're a big fan.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes, but
Yes.
part of it was that I'm going to get to travel as well. And I actually brought my parents along this time. So they met me in LA. I flew from Canada out to LA. They'd driven up, and we drove the first 6 games. So
wow.
the first 2 games were there in LA, and then we drove across California and drove through the redwoods. And so they hadn't seen or experienced some of that. We drove along Pacific Coast Highway. They hadn't seen that. So we made a trip of it. We actually ended up, I think one of the next games after that was in Portland, and we were like 15 minutes late for the game. They kept making fun of me because I was like, all right, let's see this one more thing. I made us late for the game, which is the whole purpose of having been there. But, Spurs didn't do so well on that road trip. And at the end of it, what do we have? We have the memories of the trip, of, the journey, not the destination.
Yes. I love that. Yeah, it's so we have such beautiful country here in the West, Oregon.
The entire US, and I'll say that, like, yes, get out of the US, visit the rest of the world, but also make sure you visited here at home. Of the 5 years, I probably spent 2 of it on long road trips through the US. We have so much amazing, just natural wonder throughout the country.
I especially love like the West because I'm from Jersey originally, and then I moved out here for entertainment reasons. Although we have great entertainment in New York, the entertainment industry there is flourishing, but it was because of the weather, and also because I can drive 2 hours from LA and be in Joshua Tree. I could drive 3 hours, 4 hours, and then be in like the Sierras, So it's like, it's just so beautiful here. And then obviously, like, we're not too far from, Oregon, Utah, Colorado. I love Colorado. So yeah, we're very lucky. Like, our country's so gorgeous, and there's so much to see if you just kind of just drive.
Just drive. Yeah, sometimes just drive.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so last thing, where can we find you?
So Facebook and Instagram. One of the things, when I started traveling, I realized that I had an opportunity that not very many people have or will have. And so I just wanted to share that. So the excerpt that I read at the top is from a post I had on Instagram and Facebook. And there's one of those for that day. And the day after, I went to another scenic area, which is actually even more gorgeous. And then the day after that, I went to a caves temple with a carved Buddha that's, 20 meters tall. And there's a write-up for that. And so for the last 5 years, that's what I've been doing, is every day go somewhere new and write a blurb about it and throw it up on Facebook and Instagram. Family has been begging me for years to write a book, but I don't want to sell this. I mean, it's there, it's free. I have to put it in an easier format, but for now it's on there. You can find me at MIT Flunky on those. And sorry, that's just the name I got when your Facebook came out when I was in undergrad. And so I didn't think it was going to last as long as it did. So I just picked a name, and it's stuck now forever. But
so can you spell that's MITFL?
MITFLUNKIE. Spelled the wrong way and everything. Can I change my answer about what I would advise my younger self?
So thank you so much, Amado, for joining me on the Roaming the Earth podcast, stories and adventures of people who are jet setters, nomads, and explorers. This is Drea Castro signing off. Join us again next time. Stay wild. If you're interested in hearing more stories from around the globe, don't forget to subscribe, share it to your friends, and follow me on Instagram on I'm Roaming the Earth.